Let's talk about legal aid payments, which now appear to be at a complete standstill following the hacking of the Ministry of Justice computers back in April. Remember that happened back in April. It led to an entire shutdown of the portal that actually enabled payments to be claimed by lawyers and then processed by the ministry. So what does this mean in terms of a knock-on effect? Well, it basically means that law firms now have little idea and are totally in the dark as to when or even whether they will be paid for legal aid work. And this affects everything from landlord-tenant disputes to family law issues as well. Now, the former Justice Secretary, Robert Buckland, who until last year was MP for South Swindon, had this to say about the whole issue.
Well, it's deeply disappointing, and it's another reminder that state systems and government systems have to work overtime to ensure that they meet the latest threat from hacking, from cyber crime. I'm sure that the Legal Aid Agency isn't alone, and I would hope that across government there are moves being made in order to enhance the security of all these systems.
OK, so that was the former Justice Secretary, Robert Buckland. But Beverley Watkins is managing partner at Watkins Solicitors in Bristol. Her firm does about half of its business through legal aid and joins me now. Beverley, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for coming on the programme and for your time, Beverley. Let's talk about how the current system, how well was the current system working before everything kind of got hacked and changed?
Well, it was pretty awful anyway. The portal used to frequently close for the day or freeze or shut down. It was pretty poor. And I think there is a theme here, isn't there, with a lot of government software computerised systems. I know there's been problems with the NHS really not being perhaps fit for purpose. So it was never brilliant. There would often be days when we'd have odd days when it would just close down. But this is just a complete shutdown. And what we're being told is it may be shut down for several months.
Wow. And how much has this been an issue for you in terms of how it's affected you and your legal aid work? Is there a direct impact on what's happening to you now?
Yes. And I'll be honest, I feel more stressed than I did at the start of the pandemic, and that was pretty stressful. It's really, really stressful because, we have clients and we deal with clients who are very vulnerable. They're often, a lot of our clients are victims of domestic abuse. We try to get them protection. We deal with children with disabilities. So we're dealing with very vulnerable clients. We're not the rich, solicitors firms, in other parts of the city. We're dealing with ordinary people who are particularly vulnerable, and we can't progress a lot of their cases. So we're having to say to them, because we can't make the applications for legal aid, so we're having to be very careful what work we can do, because there's a real risk that when the portal does come back on in a couple of months' time, legal aid might say, well, you shouldn't have done that work. We're not going to pay you. Wow. So it's really risky.
So is it getting to the stage, Beverley, where you're having to turn away potential clients or having to make judgment decisions about who you take on and not take on? Yes,
well, both. So some clients where we're we feel, really certain they have all the documentary evidence to obtain legal aid, and some of them we're taking on, but we're turning away a lot because we just can't make applications. And the other thing is, I'll give you an example. I have a case next week, victim of horrendous domestic abuse. It's a final hearing in respect of the children. And ordinarily, the Legal Aid Agency, before a contested final hearing, because it's obviously this is, taxpayers' money being used on a contested hearing, they have to authorise that the work is necessary. So we make an application through the portal and we say this work is necessary to cover our client for a contested hearing. Well, we can't do that now. So we've got a choice. Either we apply to adjourn the hearing next week, which our client has been waiting months and months for, or we take a risk and we represent, but we might never be paid, or we say to the client, terribly sorry, you go on your own. The last one we're not going to do, I have to hasten to add. We're not going to let a really vulnerable client who's been a victim of domestic abuse go to a contested hearing on their own. But that's the choice we're sort of weighing up at the moment.
And aside from this issue of government pay then, and what you just mentioned now, Beverley, are there any other ways in which this entire sort of hacking and this whole process is affecting other aspects of your work?
Well, obviously, the legal aid agency can't process any payments at the moment. And so I was very concerned about cash flow and how we could possibly pay our overheads, including salaries. And you may or may not be aware that the legal aid rates have not gone up for almost 30 years. They used to go up every April in line with inflation, in line with other increases, but they haven't gone up for almost 30 years. So a lot of firms no longer do legal aid. And those that do legal aid, such as us, we don't have those capital reserves to weather, 3 months of no payment or 2 months of no payment. But what the legal aid agency announced last night at about 6 p.m. was that they're putting into place some contingency fund whereby they're going to pay us some monies, which is the average of what we've had over the last 3 months. But we can't allocate it to any files as such. So it's going to be an accounting and administrative nightmare because we'll just have to hold the money, use it to pay salaries. Then when the portal's up and running, we'll submit our bills, which will then hopefully be deducted from the money. So there is now a scheme which was announced at 6 p.m. last night, but that might work for some firms, but it does depend on this average. Our average over the last 3 months is probably, it actually works out that it probably is a fair average. But if you had a firm that for whatever reason their average was lower than what they normally would have, then they might have difficulties.
Okay, Beverley, thank you so much for your time today. Beverley Watkins there, managing partner at Watkins Solicitors. And as Beverley alluded to there, the Ministry of Justice has made a statement and in summary says that the legal aid agency is unable to assess civil representation claims and payments in the usual way at the moment, but it has put contingencies in place, as we've been hearing, and that's to provide temporary average payments for civil representation work. We'll keep you updated, of course.